I was worried about what might happen to supply chains, how people might react. My experience from 9/11 had been civilization and the norms of civilization can very quickly disappear.
Welcome back, and due to popular demand, Season 4, my podcast, Relentless Life on Your Terms. And promise, starting with a very big guest who needs no introduction, has a career spanning over 35 years, working in major banks, from the National Bank, working internationally with the CBA, was most recently the CEO of one of the largest awarded builders in this country, building over 2,000 homes a year, specializing in leadership. Pleased to have you with us, Mr. Adrian Hondros.
Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the introduction.
Well, I've been waiting for a long time for this podcast, Adrian, so thanks for joining us. So obviously, having a career that spans so long, I guess you've had four major things knowing you for the last 3-4 years that have shaped your career.
Yeah.
Number one, which I found very interesting, was you're actually a 9/11 survivor.
Yeah.
Oh, so number two, sorry. The first was the man named Hondros, which was your father's business, quite a big business in Perth.
Yes. Yeah.
And the last two was obviously the global financial crisis, which everyone's most likely gone through, and the pandemic. So tell us a bit about each of these experiences.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, and appreciate the opportunity, and great to be here. I think like everyone, you are definitely formed by what you experience. And I think that it's not so much what happens to you in life, but it's how you respond to those things, which really should be your story. And so I really believe in taking control of what's happened and turning it into a positive, even if initially it's not a positive. And so the first one that you mentioned that I sort of termed the fall of the man from Hondros. So, and my dad, may he rest in peace, an entrepreneur, someone that didn't have any real education, left high school, I think at the age of 13 or 14 to support his family. This is like in 1940s, 1950s Perth. Greek family, Greek immigrants that came to Australia in the 1930s. His dad did the cane fields in Queensland. His dad passed away at a young age. His dad passed away in his 30s, and they moved to Perth where they had some family. So a pretty rough start. Yeah. But he had, like a lot of entrepreneurs, he had it in him to build businesses and do things, but he didn't have the benefit of education and probably didn't have the right people around him. Despite all that, at one stage, the man from Hondros and Hondros Homes was the largest home builder in Perth in the 1970s. And they endured a lot of different things that came along. The energy crisis of the 1970s, where there was rampant inflation, the recession of the early 80s, the recession of the early 90s, it just kept coming, right? Yep. And so eventually, unfortunately for Dad, the business eventually collapsed in the early 90s. And that was what I describe as the fall of the man from Hondros. And just give you a feel for it, at the time, I remember there were relatives at the movie theatre, wherever they were in Perth, and they heard people behind them talking about the fact, have you heard the man from Hondros has collapsed? So it was something that was really relevant at the time in Perth. And as a young adult, that was hard to take. And I remember thinking to myself, this is a really bad outcome. How can I help? What can I do? And I was there just to support mum and dad as best I could, as you can imagine. And I did that support either morally or emotionally or financially. Everything I could do, I did. But I also felt that I had to draw something from it by way of, what's the lesson here? And it's really hard to deduce lessons out of events like that. But the lessons I deduced were including surround yourself with the right people. And it doesn't matter how good you are or how good you think you are. It's just so important to have the right people around you. And I don't think Dad probably did have the right people around him, at least not all of the time.
Yep.
I think also just be aware of your own shortcomings or the things that you need to work on, and make sure that you do something about that over time and complement yourself with the people that are around you and create that leadership group, if you like, that really can deliver the outcome. But also what I learned from him and through that experience is that just never give up. So he got beaten down by all those circumstances. He actually got back up again in his 60s and started a new business in business broking and ended up actually selling that business a number of years down the track. So for me, an amazing lesson in resilience.
I was about to say, I've seen the grit and determination, even from your grandfather to your father, resilience to keep going. And all these challenges, it's what you draw from them. Because as you said, it's only how you respond that matters, because you can't control certain events, but what are you going to take from it?
Yeah.
And taking a positive out of something so challenging
Yeah.
is obviously a skill within itself. And
Yeah.
having the right people around you, I think, is a testament to any great company, any great individual, because there's no such thing as self-made. To build a great business and a brand, which you know better than anyone, you're only as good as the team around you.
Yeah.
You're going to lead a certain way, but
really
you need them.
agree. Yeah, definitely. So that was, an amazing formative experience. And at the time I was 24. So, early days.
Yep.
The second one that you referred to, the witnessing of the 9/11 attacks in New York in 2001. So just very briefly for those that are listening in, I was a part of a financial services tour, and it was organised by Bankers Trust, that was a couple of people, Rob Coombs and Chris Freeman organised it. There was a dozen of us from different parts of the financial services, financial advice, funds management industry, and we were heading for a conference in San Diego, but decided to go via New York and Boston for a few days and meet with a range of different organisations, which was fascinating and interesting. The day before 9/11, so on the 10th of September, a less famous day, we went and saw a gentleman who was described as the bear of Manhattan. He had a very negative view. He worked for a big fixed interest bond investment organisation. He had a very bearish view of what was going to happen. He was so bearish that he'd convinced, I think he was in his 70s, he'd convinced all of his clients to liquidate all of their investments. That's how bearish he was.
Wow.
I remember leaving that appointment at about 5 o'clock on the 10th of September thinking, why is that guy so negative on everything? And it was a bit of a downer. And it was just interesting to have that experience on the 10th of September.
That's incredible.
And then see what happened on the 11th. So we were in a taxi a block or two from the World Trade Center North Tower. And I was actually looking up at the North Tower when the first plane went in. But I was on the other side of the tower, so I couldn't see what had hit the building. But in my view, something had hit the building, and I witnessed the explosion. It's very hard to
make sense of it, or
to make sense of it, right? Yeah, your mind doesn't. That
can't be anything of what you're thinking.
Correct.
Yeah.
Your mind can't compute something you've never seen before.
Of course.
And interestingly, my immediate thought was, I don't remember reading they were making a movie in Manhattan today. It must be a movie. It can't be real.
Yep.
Of course, it was very real, and obviously a shocking experience. And while there was chaos and mayhem for the 20 minutes after the first plane went in, our greatest fears were confirmed because we saw the second plane. We actually saw the second plane before it hit the second tower, the South Tower. And that confirmed our greatest fears that it wasn't an accident, that New York was actually under attack.
Wow.
That's a pretty horrifying thing to be a part of. Again, though, and we were trapped there for a week after that, and a lot else went with it. However, again, to me, I think for me, the key takeout was people went to work that day and they died. They were murdered. And people's lives were cut short, and that affected thousands of people died, and tens of thousands of people. All those people, right? All those things. So my view was that through luck of the draw, we didn't get to our appointment. We were late. We weren't there. Through luck of the draw, we were spared. We weren't injured.
If you were on time, you weren't far behind all this, were you?
Well, it's even worse than that. The intention was to have breakfast at the Windows on the World restaurant before our 9 a.m. meeting. Windows on the World was the top floor of the North Tower. Everyone died from about the 91st floor upwards of the North Tower, because that's where the first plane went in.
God. So
if we'd done that breakfast...
If you're not late, you're in trouble.
If we'd done that breakfast, we were gone.
We're not having this conversation.
I would not be sitting here if we'd gone to that breakfast. A really confronting outcome in many ways. But as I say, you've got to draw on these things. And in my view, I felt like I owed it to the people that died that day. Firstly, blessed that we weren't a part of the fatality list. And then out of respect to those people, which we could have been a part of, I felt I've just got to make sure that life is lived to the fullest. After that, at that time, Emma and I, my wife and I, we had 3 children. We then had a 4th, our youngest son, Ben. We probably always planned that, but I think we were even more determined to do that as a result. And then I think that it just caused me to be even more ambitious and more determined to not just be successful, but to try to help people and do what I could to really help others to have the best life they could as well. And so I've always liked to think that since then I've been much more dedicated to supporting and helping others in what they're trying to achieve as well.
There's so many parallels between initially what you saw with your family and this experience, what you've drawn from them to become resilient. And I see, and knowing you for years, because we're actually fellow club members, which is where I first saw you speak, which I thought was fantastic. The leadership abilities, and I know you talk about leadership in crisis a lot, and I can see that you draw a lot from these experiences, and I see how cool, calm, and collected you are. And it's just such a good thing to be able to come out the other end and think, hey, there's a reason I'm here. What am I going to draw from this, and how do I lead people? Because to a much lesser degree, obviously, most people are not going to experience what you experienced, but they can still draw from those lessons and imply them in their current positions.
Yeah, I think that when I'm often asked about it, as you have as well today, one of the things I draw from it is that I think I've been recalibrated to a degree by that. So that's a dramatic, horrifying, terrifying event. It's not possible to experience something like that and walk away the same. That's not possible. And I think effectively I've been recalibrated by it. So from my point of view, what someone might see as a challenge, a difficulty or bad news, I'd say, oh, okay, we'll work our way through that. And so it sort of taught me to be perhaps calmer and just to be perhaps more measured and not to overreact to things because, quite frankly, it's not a bad day if you got home alive, and we'll start from there.
Well, I've never known you obviously before that, but I've always known you as a cool, calm, collected and measured individual, which is why I feel your leadership ability is where it is, why you've ran such big organizations, why you've been headhunted from different experiences and businesses. Now, they're the two things which most people know a lot about. More familiar with. But we'll talk on them as well because you list them as the four things that have impacted your life. Was the global financial crisis and obviously the most recent pandemic. What were the key takeaways from that, and how do you put all those four things together?
Yeah, so it's probably going to be hard to loop them together, but I'll do my best. But with the GFC, and a lot of the people listening in would have had their own GFC experience, their own GFC story. For me, I made the decision to leave National Australia Bank in 2007. I was leading the private bank by that stage and been there for a number of years through both financial advisory, financial planning and into privite banking.
So mainly for our listeners, you're in the financial services sector for mainly before
for most of the time, before Porter Davis. So almost 30 years in financial services. And so I'd made the decision to leave National Australia Bank, and I found the opportunity to join a business called St Andrews Australia, which was a advisory wealth management business owned by HBOS Australia, which was owned by HBOS in the UK. Now, the relevance of that is that in March of 2008, I hadn't even started. I'd had 3 months hiatus between NAB and St Andrews HBOS. And the weekend before I started, they started shorting the HBOS stock on the London Stock Exchange, which was the prelude of the GFC coming to the UK. And I remember listening and hearing that there was trouble with the HBOS stock on the London Stock Exchange. And this was the owner of the company that I decided to join. And I'm thinking,
interesting, good
what
times.
is happening here? Or what is going on? And it was the beginning of the real effect of the GFC on the London Stock Exchange and in the UK. As a result of all of that, HBOS fell to its knees. HBOS was an unbelievably revered bank in the UK. It was Halifax and Bank of Scotland that had joined. And particularly the Bank of Scotland piece was a highly regarded, prudent bank, as the Scottish would do. And so for this to be happening to HBOS, the parallel would be like the Commonwealth Bank being in financial crisis in Australia.
So one of the big fours, what we call our big fours.
It'd be just unthinkable that there'd be something dramatic happening. And it was dramatic. And the story goes that the governor of the Bank of England called the governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia and said, do you know anyone who could buy the HBOS assets in Australia? I understand what might have happened after that was the Reserve Bank of Australia then rang around. And as it turned out, it seems that the Commonwealth Bank was interested. And so CBA was the successful buyer of the assets, which included Bankwest, mostly in Perth, but a decent-sized bank in its own right.
Did you take all the team across, or a majority of the team?
No, we took the whole team across. There was a particular moment where I was on a teleconference with my entire team. I had 300 or 400 people across Australia.
Yep.
And I said to them, look, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. And I'd ask you to follow me, but I can't guarantee the outcome. And so I said, look, I'm going to go to the Commonwealth Bank.
You're honest and transparent with the team. This is what's going on. This is what I'd like. Make your own choice with the information that you had.
I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I don't have all the answers. No one's got all the answers.
It's communicating. It's being clear with
transparent, authentic. Remember, this is in the midst of the global financial crisis.
Which everyone's
People are
under
worried.
Uncertainty already.
People are worried. People are worried about their jobs, their families.
Their security. What am I going to do next? Where's the money coming from? What's happening? Yep.
Exactly. And what's going to happen next? So I said, look, I'm going to go to the Commonwealth Bank. I'd love you all to come with me, but I don't know what will happen. But I think we're best served in a storm to go into a safe harbour, and CBA was a safe harbour and has proven to be a very safe harbour since and always. And that worked out really well. And I think we retained well in excess of 90% of the employees of St Andrews.
Fantastic.
And to the credit of Ralph Norris, who was the chief executive of CBA at the time, he didn't have to, he honoured the bonus and incentive payments of every single person.
To the previous business.
Correct. So, didn't have to do it.
Which is fantastic.
It was amazing, right?
I love
amazing
hearing that
gesture.
stories. You don't hear it enough.
Yeah, amazing gesture. He was a very decent person to deal with and really cared about the outcome, which again is relatively rare, I think. So I think that was again a lesson in communication, authenticity, leadership. And if you don't know the answers, okay, you don't know. Tell people, but also be clear to them about what you're going to do. And I think probably again a lesson in resilience, that even though everything's falling apart around you, just keep going and stay true to yourself, and make sure that you're communicating to your people. They really need to hear from you.
Because you look, clear communication is important, but even saying that you don't have the answers, but these are the potential possibilities, is better than not hearing anything at all. Because keeping people in the dark. And I remember you told me that as well, because obviously you talk about crisis management. It's so important, crisis leadership, crisis management, and it's so important to communicate and to say that I'm also don't know all the answers, but we're going to work through it.
Yeah,
we've got a plan. We'll figure out the details along the way, which is exactly what you did.
Yeah, and be real. I think people want you to be real, and you should be real to yourself, to them. So if we move into the COVID-19 pandemic, having had those 3 prior experiences, I felt reasonably prepared.
That was the least of the, I guess, right. but again, uncertain, because no one knows. This is
correct.
We haven't seen such an event in our lifetime anyway.
I didn't know what was going to happen. I had a distinct feeling it was going to be bad. In fact, in February of 2020, I wrote to family, some friends, my executive team at Porter Davis, and said to them, look, I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel that this is going to be a really bad thing we're all going to have to deal with. Who knows how long it will go on for. I'm not sure what the effects will be, but I really feel like you should take some steps to protect your families from whatever might come. So, my view was, and I know it then became quite common.
Yep.
My view was, get out into the supermarkets, make sure that you've got sufficient food and water, go and get some cash from the ATM, just be prepared for whatever might come, because who knows what's coming. I said the same to my mum in Perth, my in-laws in Perth. I was worried about what might happen to supply chains, how people might react. My experience from 9/11 had been civilization and the norms of civilization can very quickly disappear. In fact, within a day, you can go from an orderly civil society to Rafferty's rules and mayhem. So I didn't know what was coming. So I was thinking, well, we should prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Yep.
And so there's a picture of my eldest son, Jack, at the supermarket in Mossman in Sydney with two trolleys full of groceries, and no one else was doing that at the time. And I think he said to me that the checkout person said, "You having a party or what are you doing?" He said, "No, my dad told me to come down here and fill
I'm getting prepared.
Fill 2 trolleys with groceries." And the guy's like, "Why? Like, what are you doing?" Anyway, so as it turned out, kind of part of it was right and part of it wasn't. I think in the fullness of time, it sort of turned out that way. But my view was that, something very challenging was coming and we needed to have at least a mindset of being ready.
Did you have that view, Adrian, because of the previous experiences?
I think so.
Because of you saw 9/11 in effect, you sure the GFC personally, they've affected you to that
I think so.
calamity? Did you think that's why you had that outlook?
Yeah, I think my senses were just, and there would have been
Your
other people
spider
like me.
senses were
Yeah,
tingling.
my senses were just a bit more alert because of what I'd been through, just a bit more alert to the possibility, because I'd seen things that I didn't think were possible. Just because you don't think something's possible doesn't mean it
it's
can't
not.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just hasn't happened before.
Or you don't believe it's possible
Or you
until
don't
you
believe.
see it.
Correct. Yeah. So there was something like that, I think, Chris, to your point. There's something like that. But really interestingly and really importantly, I knew the importance of leading in a crisis. And I knew it was important to try to get that right. And so I turned to a couple of really great reference points or support points in that regard. So, I'd had the benefit of going to INSEAD. INSEAD's the business school in France, one of the best in the world. And I went there in 2015, sponsored by the Commonwealth Bank, who was my employer at the time, to do that, which was very gracious.
Did you ask for that, or they offered that to you?
I was a bit of both. So Ian Narev was the CEO at the time. He was after Ralph Norris, and he was incredibly attuned to what people needed to help them develop and grow. And it was through a conversation with Ian in mid-2015 that the opportunity came about, which I'll always be grateful for. He was a great leader to work with and work for. And so I had a month in Fontainebleau in France, south of Paris, at INSEAD. It sounds very romantic.
It does.
And amazing place, with a great forest next to it, which was great for running and walking. And I loved my running, so I did plenty of running through the Fontainebleau forest. However, the gentleman running the program globally for INSEAD, a guy called Ian Woodward, he's an Australian, and he does an amazing job of running that program. And you become a part of an alumni. And I have still to this day, we have a WhatsApp group with our INSEAD alumni from around the world. There's 60 of us. And Ian made available a leadership in crisis, management in crisis Zoom broadcast to join. So I joined the broadcast and learned a lot from Ian on that evening. And this is still very early in the pandemic.
You've got that experience plus everything else. All this is coming together.
Just all coming together.
You're seeing it more often. You stand and say, hey, that's what I was thinking. And that makes sense. You're putting it all togetger.
Just pull it all together. So, and Ian took us through a case study, which really was about talking about or telling your people the brutal truth, but then giving them reason for hope. And so he drew on a case study, which was a US military case study. I might be wrong in saying Korean War. It might have been World War II, but a US military case study where the most senior captive in a prison camp in wartime was a senior American leader. And he had the job of trying to keep the morale of his people up, who were also captives in the prison camp. But his job was to try to keep their morale up, but not bullshit to them. Like,
what a challenging task.
What a challenge. Imagine that, right? You're the most senior person.
What a daunting task.
You're the
so
most,
be honest, but keep their morale up
Yeah.
in the most challenging circumstances.
How could it be any more challenging being the most senior person in a prison camp?
I couldn't even imagine.
You can't even,
You can't fathom that.
Yeah, so it's this amazing case study that gets talked about, and it's all about give them the brutal truth and then give them a reason for hope. And so I thought that really resonated with me. So I thought,
you've done that previously in the past.
It resonated. So I thought, I'm going to follow this model. I'm going to follow this approach. This works for me. I think I can do this because it's give them the brutal truth.
Instinctively you did that due to your experience.
Yeah.
Then you've got probably the best case study in the world confirming that this is a good way to go.
Yeah.
Which gives you a lot of confidence.
Gives you a lot of confidence. And so I thought communication's the key, particularly as you said earlier, particularly in times of uncertainty. People need to hear from their leader, even if the leader doesn't have all the answers, which is typically the case, but they still need to hear from their leader. And so because we all got sent home, as you know, I think on the 20-something of March 2020, Porter Davis, I sent everyone home like most businesses across Australia. And we had to adapt and we were agile like everyone else and got onto Zoom for the first time and all those things.
Yep.
So, it seems a long time ago now, but it wasn't that long ago, as we know.
I think the Zoom, just quickly on that, I think what happened, and a lot of people pivoted and took advantage of that, I think the pandemic has increased the speed by 10, 15 years that people have acceptance of Zoom. We're selling pieces of real estate. We haven't met the people that are interstate. Everything's on screen. Who would have imagined that you'd be doing so many deals like that? I think
never have imagined.
I wouldn't personally, but I think it's brought the market 10, 15 years ahead of its time.
Yep, definitely accelerated. It's absolutely accelerated the adoption of digital.
Yeah.
And to use, just to digress briefly, to use the Porter Davis example. So at the start of the pandemic, Porter Davis had been working on a brand called PDX, which was a first home buyer brand.
This was because of the pandemic, though, yeah?
Pre-pandemic.
Oh, pre-pandemic.
Pre-pandemic, digitally enabled.
Wow.
The customers had the opportunity to choose their home, choose their land, choose their facade, choose their inclusions, all online. They didn't want to talk to anyone. They didn't have to. And they could take it all the way through to signing the contract, paying a deposit. Now, most people would break glass and have a chat with someone at some stage, but some people actually went the whole way through and didn't actually ever talk to anyone at Porter Davis.
What was the increase in percentage of take-up rate after the pandemic?
Oh, well, that particular new opportunities, we launched that into the pandemic in March of 2020. It had an amazing take-up.
Oh, that would have been a different level then, because
hundreds and hundreds of homes were sold through that new portal.
You could not pick a better time to launch a product of that nature.
We were fortunate, but as they say, you make your own luck.
Of course, because you were forward-thinking from that nature, and something happened, which again, you talk about turning everything into a positive. A visionary or a great company like Porter Davis.
Yeah, so I digress, but the founders and shareholders of Porter Davis, particularly Anthony Roberts and Paul Wolfe, were absolutely convinced that sort of offer into the market was going to be extremely well accepted, and the market was ready for some form of new digital offer. What we didn't realise was that the whole world was going to accelerate digitally as a result of COVID. And so it really, as I say, I think we probably made our own luck.
Of course.
Yeah.
I would like to digress a little bit, because there's a lot of viewers that are doing a certain job that want to change careers. And you went from, although your backbone, your parents was in real estate, you were in the financial sector all along, but you went from finance to being the CEO of a builder that's doing over 2,000 homes a year, which, how many people did you guys employ?
I think at one stage there would have been well over 500 employees and a couple of thousand or more subcontractors.
So that's between 2,500 employees and contractors.
And more.
You've went from one industry to a totally different one. How did you make that transition? But not only how did you make it, to go to CEO level. So you're going from one job to the highest pinnacle job. How would you do that when you've got no previous experience in real estate? So and how was that received?
All great questions. So I think perhaps in terms of answering those to start with, sort of should talk a bit more about why. So, my view was that, and maybe it goes all the way back to some of the comments I made about 9/11 in wanting to have a fulfilled and sort of rich life and experience. So, we used to say at Porter Davis, get comfortable being uncomfortable, I should say. And that was often said by the founder and managing director.
I love that motto.
Roberts.
I live my life by that motto.
Yep. And so I think that that's a good one for people to take away. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. The reality is, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing to the extent you could.
You're going backwards. You're not evolving.
Or you might just be coasting. And the reality was that I loved my job at Commonwealth Bank in leading the private bank. I had a great team. We'd won the most popular or best private bank of the year 7 years in a row for the so-called $1 to $10 million category, which is almost everybody.
So it's a very competitive
field. Everyone's in that
and
field.
You had 7 years on the balance.
7 years.
That's fantastic.
7 years on the trot. So I had a great team, great business, enormous support from the rest of the Commonwealth Bank. It was terrific. However, it went on for 7 or 8 years, and I think my experience at INSEAD in 2015 contributed also to realising that it was time for change. And conversations with Ian Rev, who I talked about earlier, really helped that as well. And so I thought, if I'm going to make a change, I should make a dramatic change. So rather than just sort of pull off one banking jersey and put on the other, I should actually do something quite different. And I was just fascinated to find out, is it possible to take the learnings from one industry to another? So do you take your learnings on leadership, on strategy, on communication? Can you take those things from one industry to the next? And to your earlier point, let me be abundantly clear. I knew nothing about building homes, and I mean nothing. And I'm not even good handyman around the house. Like, that's not my thing.
I can second on the same. But to be, before we digress, are the skills transferable for those who are listening? 100% categorical leaderships.
100%. I can absolutely guarantee they are.
And look, I find that whether that be in sports, whether that be a winning mindset's a winning mindset. You can use certain skills in anything. And you've used a couple of examples from even the most intense circumstances, being clear with your communication, saying you don't have the answer, but we're going to figure out means everything. So going back to the Porter Davis story, how were you received by, hey, here's your new CEO. By the way, he's never worked in real estate before, Mr. Adrian Hondros.
Well, that's not far off how the introduction went. And to be fair,
because a lot of people would have thought, wow, what's going on here?
Oh, I think they were running a book on me that the weight of money was he won't last. And I think that I know that, which is fine, right? And that's not an unusual thing to be going on.
That's half the excitement, though, isn't it?
Bit of fun, right? So So look, I think that I was, again, I think on day 3 we had what we called our One Tribe, which was we got the company together 3 or 4 times a year. And I was introduced at One Tribe at was Etihad Stadium at the time. Of course, it's Marvel now. And I was introduced as someone who'd come from banking and finance and was now going to be our new CEO. And the company hadn't had an external CEO before, so this was a new experience for the organisation. Big change.
Big change, big achievement for yourself as well.
Oh, thank you. I mean, look, I think really more of the credit should go to Anthony Roberts, Paul Wolfe, and Steve Tankey, who were the shareholders and directors at the time, because they made that.
Massive.
It's a courageous decision.
Could go both ways.
Could
and
go
most likely will go probably not favourable.
But to their credit, Anthony and then Paul had both been to Harvard and done the entrepreneurs program there, and I've mentioned that to you previously.
You have, yeah.
And part of the outcome of that was that they had the confirmation, realization that it was time that someone else to lead the organisation. And that's a credit to them. And, you know, you've got a successful business. You're the founder of this business. It's a tough thing to decide.
It's like one of your child.
Yeah.
When you put that much time and effort into it, 7.5 years I've been here, but for me, it is one of my goals to be able to do that, because I think it's good for your team. It's good for everyone involved. But I can't, in 2.5 years when I know it's going to be a hard decision, but I welcome the challenge. I know it's going to be very difficult. Like one of your child, you put so much into it.
Very hard to walk away, very hard to hand over the reins, if you like, to someone else. Very challenging. And I think anyone listening that's been in that situation or thinking about that outcome would know how very challenging it is. But importantly, to your point, so there I was on stage and I just said to them, I just thought I have to diffuse. I know what they're thinking. They're thinking this guy knows nothing about residential construction. He knows nothing about building houses. So I thought I just need to call it and tell them I know nothing.
So you led with that, yeah?
I said, look, I don't know anything about building houses. I said, look, I think most of you have forgotten more than I would currently know about it. Literally, I know nothing. And therefore, that's not why I'm here, because the organisation's full of people who know a lot about building houses. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because and then I went into my experiences, talked about my leadership experiences, talked about my strategic planning experiences, talked about how I'd worked with different organisations in different circumstances, whether they've been sold or they've made acquisitions or they've merged, all sorts of different things, and talked about how bringing all of that to Porter Davis at that time back in 2016 was going to be, hopefully, of great benefit to the organisation.
From a leadership perspective, because you ran award-winning teams as well, like you mentioned before. So bringing that experience, but obviously, so you're up front with the communication. Hey, here I am. I don't know much about real estate. You guys are here for that. I don't know anything about real estate. What I do know is this is my set of skills.
Yeah.
And we're going to see how we go.
Yeah. But then, of course, I led in with I love property.
Because you had a backbone and back love for property because your father.
Yeah, correct. So I led into, but I love property. So I love houses.
So
I love
my passion's
property.
here.
Yeah, my passion's here. I've always loved property. And then I spoke to them about my dad's business in Perth, and we were at the time the largest home builder in Perth. And as a kid, I'd go to display homes and construction sites. So, so I was able to draw on that. So it wasn't as if I was, alien to the idea. I just hadn't worked in the industry, but I had a passion. And without that passion, I wouldn't have gone to Porter Davis. It was important because they're passionate owners, a passionate leadership team, passionate people across the business. Everyone in that business proudly represents that business, as they should. It's got amazing design, style, and quality.
They do. One of my favourite looking builders when it comes to quality.
Yeah, really.
Obviously, got the likes of Glenville as well, which I hold in the same vein.
Yeah.
But two of my favourite design builders were Porter Davis and Glenville. Yeah. I thought the product they do is exceptional.
Yeah, building beautiful quality homes. Yep, exactly.
And
right.
their motto's respect, isn't it?
Yeah, and the Porter Davis motto is respect the dream and respect each other.
Yep.
Yeah, so really powerful stuff, and all that stuff
course.
resonated. It all resonated. But I think, yeah, to your point, Chris, it's just important to be open and transparent and call it. Don't leave them wondering. You know they're thinking it, so just say it.
Because you can diffuse it.
Diffuses
Get it
it.
out of their mind.
Yeah.
Tell them what you're here for, because
Yeah.
people are just going to keep having those thoughts.
Yeah.
Just might as well hit it head on. I
Yeah.
take most of my difficult conversations like that.
Yeah.
I know what people will be thinking in certain cases. I lead with that.
Yeah,
Because I know that by breaking the pact or getting someone's guard down, they can actually listen to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because I always say, if you go into a situation, you don't explain it or don't bring it up front, it's like speaking to someone with their guard up. Everything you say is just going to go, it's not going to
Correct.
go in their ears.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to be honest and upfront. And at least that way I can have a communication where I can
Open it
connect with a
up.
person.
Yeah, it just opens it up. I think also, with good counsel from the owners and from some of the people around me, I also felt I've got to get out and about. I can't be the CEO that sits in the office. And by the way, Porter Davis has amazing offices in Docklands in Melbourne, Google-like offices. They're world-class, and a lot of time, effort and money went into creating an incredible environment. So a real credit to everyone that was involved in that. However, I couldn't be the CEO that no one ever saw just in the office. And it's a residential construction business. So what do I got to do? I've got to get out there and get on
see
site.
the people, meet the people. Yeah.
I've got to go and see the construction team. They're building the homes. Everyone's important. But when the rubber hits the road, we're building homes for those families and those individuals. I've got to get out there and see. So right up front, literally right up front, that first week I'm out on site, getting to look at what we actually do. And I think that just enormously helped me with an early understanding of what was happening. But I think it kind of sent a good, strong message to the rest of the organisation that I realise I've got to get out there and
You lead
spend
by
time on
example.
site.
You're not leading by talking. You're leading
Yeah.
by action.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference when it comes
Yeah.
to leadership. A lot of people do as I say, not do as I
Yeah.
do.
And also get the reality on site from the guys and girls supervising
From the horse's
the
mouth.
building of the homes, not relying on what someone else,
Of course.
not relying on sort of Chinese whispers, but go and hear it for yourself.
Yeah.
So I think that really helped me, and I think it just helped to send, I think, a good, strong signal that whatever you might have been thinking this guy might have been like is actually probably going to be a bit different to that. So perhaps give him a chance. And then as it turned out, I stayed for almost 6 years, so that worked out pretty well.
So I want to transitioning. You went from so many careers, so many different careers, big careers, from finance into real estate, and most recently, which I'm very, very grateful from because I'm one of the beneficiaries. You sit on a lot of boards,
Yep.
which you chair. You've now started this month. Actually, was the first month you started as my business consultant to Reventon,
Yep.
which is my business, which is something you do with a few clients, and we're going to assemble a board together with all that.
Yep.
So you're bringing all that experience here. Tell us about, again, I'm not going to be a CEO anymore. Start my own consulting firm. What was that transformation? What made you go, you know what, this is my next part, I'm going? So I really do admire that, because some people feel so comfortable in their current role, they want to give it a go, but you know what, I'm quite comfortable, and they get comfortable with being comfortable. Nothing great ever comes from a comfort zone, I always say. You need to get off your couch. You need to do something extraordinary that might be risky. You might fail, but then you might create something great. So
Yeah.
how'd you go again to, let's go again? I know you like running as well, so you're running from one career to the other. How'd you go from one?
I gave
one
it
spot
a lot of thought while I was running. So yeah, I think again it was just time for a change. So partly due to the fact that my observation would be that if you're not the owner but you're the CEO, I think it's healthy for an organisation every 5, 6, 7 years to have a new CEO, fresh pair of eyes, another objective set of eyes, bring in new thoughts and ideas. It doesn't matter how good people think you are or aren't. Bottom line is there needs to be change at the top from time to time.
And you said to me,
Yep.
it's leave before your time's up, while you're at the top of your career, while it's doing well. Now's my time. So it's like when you got a lot of athletes, they're at their peak, some finish at their peak, and you go, why did they do that?
Yeah.
But you see them play for years, and you can see
Yep.
their career going down. You want to leave at a very high point.
Well, I think you want to leave when people want you to stay. Is the best time to leave. And I remember I referred to Ralph Norris from CBA, and I asked him just after he had announced his resignation. At the time, I said to him, "Why now?" And he said to me, "Adrian, better to leave a day early than being accused of staying a day too long, or words to that effect.
Wow.
So that's always stuck with me. I'm thinking, okay, if my time ever comes where I'm chief executive and I have a decision to make,
Yep.
it's best to probably leave when it feels a bit too soon rather than leave when it feels a bit too long. So that was partly on my mind, and I felt that the timing was about right in that regard. And I think over the years, it's sort of been building up inside me that I was keen to, for want of a better term, do my own thing. I've always enjoyed mentoring others, supporting others, coaching others, and there's a lot of people in my life and network that I've enjoyed doing that with. So part of it was, is there a way I can turn that into, a living? Can I turn that into a business?
Yeah, but going from one can assume, and we know a very great, high-paying job, very important job, being a CEO of such a big firm.
Yeah.
To say, because I did it at the start. I was a sales consultant. I think I was 24 when the company I worked in was a receivership, and I went from 300 grand income to zero income for many, many years. That's a very daunting thing. But 24, and I was a little bit younger with less responsibility, to go from there to that must have been very risky, and thinking, am I doing the right thing? Did you start to question in your mind, I've got a great gig here, I've done very well to get here, I shouldn't leave? Was that thought going on in your mind?
Oh, that thought was certainly there. That thought lost because I moved on, but that thought was there. And clearly the more comfortable things to do would have been stay at Porter Davis, would have been go and get another senior executive or chief executive role, which I'm sure if I tried, probably would have landed something. They were the more comfortable things to do. But in the spirit of only having one lap around the mulberry bush, you should try to do some different things. And it's, as I said, it had been in me for some time to try it. I'm very fortunate that my wife, Emma, and my adult children are very supportive of the different decisions that I've made career-wise over the years. And I've also had a lot of friends and others around me who have been encouraging me to do it because they felt they could see that it would be successful. So I thought, well, I should give it a chance. What's the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is it fails.
And you can go to another job as a CEO.
I was going to get another job.
Yeah, but I guess from myself, see you feature in a few podcasts, and one of your strengths from what I observed was leadership and the ability to navigate and pull teams together. When you draw from all your experiences and what you've seen, it's very clear to see why.
Yeah.
Cool, calm and collected. You communicate well, you give clarity, and you can bring the best out of teams, which is why probably he's won that award 7 years on the bounce. I think every good company needs to be led from the top up, but led by example.
Yeah.
So you consult to a number of different businesses now. You're on a number of different boards.
Yep. And have ambition to do more. Yes.
Good, because I'm hoping for you to do more for me as well. So that's a good thing. So I know it's Hondros Consulting. That's officially launched for everyone.
Yep. Yeah, officially launched in June. 1st of July is the start of the first full financial year. Website's under construction. Branding's been done, as you know.
Yep.
Been signing clients. Joined one board already, being Count Financial as a non-executive director.
Yep. About
to join another one, which is a biotech in Melbourne.
Yep.
But I'll wait for that to be announced by them. But an organisation I'm associated with and have been invested in and active in as well. So and there's more coming. So I'm feeling really good about it. I've got a plan. You won't be surprised to know.
I know you've got a plan. I know you do.
Currently ahead of plan. Which is good. And it feels great. But interestingly, for anyone listening in or watching that's thinking about doing something similar, so I'm 56 years old, 35-year career. I've never worked for myself or been in my own business. So let me be clear, never. And so even the concept of, I had to buy my own laptop. I had to set up accounts, get credit cards, just all the things you need to do, set up a new email address, just all the practical things you have to do. There's no EA anymore. There's not hundreds of people around me. It's just me.
How do you find that, Adrian? Because I want to ask you, because I remember just from my experience when I was national manager at a company, it wasn't as big, but I trained hundreds of salespeople. And at one stage, I had 35 salespeople across 3 states.
Yeah.
And when I went from that to owning my own franchise, I felt I had all these people communicating, relying on me to on my own. For me, it was a lonely transition, but one that I'll never go back because I wanted to grow. So that ability to have a team around me was so exhilarating. Then when I lost it and had to rebuild it, that was very challenging for me. How did you go from running such a big team to doing all that at 56?
Yeah, look, it's only early days, so noting that. However, I think, with the opportunity of working with yourself and your team, that in itself is a great positive dynamic. So it's not as if I don't have organisations to interact with. I do.
You've got multiple.
There's already 3 organisations I'm interacting with regularly. There's a 4th that's about to start. I've got the 2 non-executive director roles to add to the directorship that I have at the Commonwealth Bank's Private Health Insurance Fund, CBHS, which is a member-owned organisation. I've been on the board there since 2017. We do a great job for our members. So there's lots of organisations I'm interacting with. So it's not as if I'm sitting at home with no one to talk to. There's already a lot going on. And as you know, as a member, Club of United Business is a terrific membership to be a part of. Melbourne and Sydney. I've got beautiful premises to work from.
Which is where we first met, mind you.
Where we first met.
Yep.
2 premises in Sydney, the premises here on Queen Street in Melbourne. So all the boxes are really ticked still anyway. It's just ticked differently.
All that as much. Yeah. And look, for those who are listening, it is a great club. It's ran by Daniel Hakim. If you're an entrepreneur, if you want to meet like-minded people, that's where I met Adrian. I've built business relationships from there. I've met incredible people like Adrian, which I now work with. I've set up businesses from there. I do little events there, little seminars there as well. It's a great club to get a part of. Club of United Business. Daniel Hakim, myself, Adrian.
Yeah.
We go to the clubhouse. We do little core events as well, which it is really good. And you meet like-minded people. So even if it does get that point where when I was 24, I never had all these opportunities. I wasn't networking as many people. I didn't have mentors or coaches or people that led me like I do now. Now I've got a few. Like yourself, I've got 3 or 4 that help me. And I think that's been a big game changer. Bouncing things and ideas off other people, or even confirming that your idea, you can lead with so much more confidence. I'm thinking a certain way. You stress test everything.
Challenge, validation, the opportunity to debate and discuss. So I think I do often say, and have said on some of the couple of the Cub podcasts that I've done, that being a member of Cub since 2016, so 2016,
You're one of the longest standing members in Melbourne.
Well, I joined in Sydney. You joined in Melbourne.
I'm only 219 is when I joined.
Yeah, but still one of the longest standing Melbourne members that you'd be. So having ambitious, successful, creative, supportive people around you at a place like Club of United Business has been a part of the story, because having that support, having people to interact with, having a place to go, because one of the great things you face if you go from being a CEO or a senior executive to starting your own business, like, where do you go? You can't stay at home every day. Yes, there's shared workplaces and they're good, but one of the great things about Cub is that it's a community. So as you know, you've got that support. And so you get moral support and you get genuine support from
people
the other
that are going
members.
through the same challenges you're going through as well. They can navigate through different scenarios, which is it's a big benefit.
Yeah, very much so. And yourself and one of my other clients, WT Capital, they're both members of Cub. Yourself and Matt Wilson at WT Capital. So
you met Nick as well. Nick Riley from Innovate.
I met Nick Riley there from Innovate. I met Jason Robinson there from Future Advisory.
I know both those 2 gentlemen. They're both great. I've had dinners with both of them, learned a lot from both. They both run great companies. I would like to, if we can, ask you a couple of questions, because with your experience, it would be remiss of me to not ask these questions for my audience as well, and from personal interest. You've got a ton of experience when it comes to finance and wealth industry, wealth creation and stuff like that, financial services. But the most recent, obviously, is in real estate. We are seeing, and I've asked this question to multiple people that have experience like yourself. Myself, 23 years in the industry, I've never seen a fixed price contract change price. Now it has. I've spoken to people who have also mentored me, with 2nd generation people in the industry for 67 years, and I go, have you ever seen anything like this? The times we had. I want to ask you the same question, is what's happening now? Have you ever seen anything even remotely like this, with cost of materials, with all the craziness happening?
I mean, the word unprecedented is the most overused word in the last couple of years, but unfortunately, I think the word unprecedented does again apply to the current economic circumstances, in particular to the residential construction and commercial construction industries. I think the thing that troubles me about the current circumstances, and it's about sort of thinking it through, is that what we're seeing is, as everyone watching and listening would know, is we're seeing inflation at levels we haven't seen for decades, and that's well known, and that's a global phenomenon. what started as apparently transient inflation has now become embedded. And so reserve banks and central banks around the world, including our own RBA, are doing what they do to fight inflation, which is raise their interest rates.
Yeah.
The cash rate in Australia, raising interest rates. The cash rate's now at 1.85. It started at 0.1.
Lowest in history. It was
Lowest
for
in history,
long.
and still already extremely low by any historical
People
measure.
actually forget that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
actually quite low still.
It's still extremely low by historical measure.
But people that are highly leveraged,
Yeah.
it's always good to get advice around
Yeah.
that, because how does it affect your net cash position?
Yeah.
What differences does it make? But the inflation is through the roof. But going back to the building piece and the cost of materials,
Yeah.
do you see that slowing down a bit? Do you see that? Because the building supply, I've never seen anything like it.
So it's supply chain, it's cost of materials, it's availability of labour.
Yep.
And we need to keep in mind that with labour, even though we've all moved on, if I can use that terminology, COVID's still, of course,
Here.
and it's out there. And a lot of people are getting sick. And even if they're not getting that sick, they're doing the right thing. They're staying home. If they're staying home, they can't be on site. So there's still ongoing disruption to factories, to supply chains, to
Time frames,
construction
deliveries.
sites. Yep, everything, right? So everything's disrupted from a labour point of view, mostly due to COVID. It's also been a really bad winter for the flu. So it's been disrupted. But supply chains, you might recall, I think the real start of the real disruption to broader supply chains, remember that ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal? So the ship got stuck, I think, for 2 or 3 weeks. It disrupted the Suez Canal. That actually set off a chain reaction around the world where supply chains were already vulnerable.
Or another 2 weeks.
It just kind of made it all worse really quickly. So people forget about that. But that was actually a contributing factor. It's taken a long time for that to even recover from. And it was in March, April of 2021 that the real effect of the timber shortage started to hit the construction industry.
Yep.
And in a place like Melbourne, where most of the homes are still built with timber frames, that's a big deal.
Of course.
And there were stories of ships with timber bound for Australia where someone else has come in on the side, paid
turning
more,
in, and they're going,
send the ship to San Francisco. It's not going to Sydney anymore because we're willing to
because
pay.
they're double, trip, whatever it is. 'cause they're
whatever
paying
it is, right?
ridiculous fees
This is real. This is what actually
in real
happens.
time, yeah.
So supply chains still very disrupted, labour disrupted, prices increasing. I can't see that changing in the short term. I think that's still going to be the case for months to come.
Are you talking, when you say months, 6, 12, 18?
Hard to know. It's at least the next 6, maybe it's the next 6 to 12. It's very difficult to know, but it's not going to fix itself anytime soon. Getting back to that interest rate inflation piece, usually inflation's rising because consumer demand is strong, and so reserve banks and central banks hit it with interest rates. On this occasion, inflation was rising at a time where consumer demand was moderate at best and consumer sentiment was already relatively low. And so they've come out with their one-trick pony, which is to smack everyone with interest rates.
Yep.
But on this occasion, inflation is rising because supply has been interrupted, not because consumption's strong. So what they're doing is they're killing moderate consumption with interest rates, and we've still got the supply chain issue.
So it's problem upon problem,
Problem on problem.
which is what we're seeing now.
What's what we're seeing now. So I do think it is unprecedented. Often people say this time's different. I think on this occasion it is a bit different because of the root cause.
We haven't seen it. We
haven't seen it
this
like
before.
this. Yeah. Having said all of that, households are quite cashed up. As we saw today, unemployment is at its lowest level, I think, in 40
Which is very positive.
years or something like that, which is a big
People
positive.
are way ahead of their mortgages because they weren't spending money. People like years ahead of their mortgages because they're out. And I always say to people, I hope that they take some of that money and they don't all spend it. They invest some of it as well, because otherwise, what was the lessons you learned through COVID? What's the lesson we're learning through now?
Yep.
I hope that wasn't all in vain, that we remember these lessons and we put ourselves in better financial positions.
Yeah, and keep in mind, to that point, keep in mind also that, in the last 10 or 15 years, offset accounts have become very popular, been offered on many, many home mortgage products. Offset accounts have got hundreds of millions, billions of dollars in them. So people were getting ahead of their mortgage payments. There's a lot of positives as well.
It's a lot of liquidity, isn't there?
A lot of liquidity.
Which
a lot of liquidity.
I remember
and
Mark Morris saying that as well.
Yeah,
He's going to have a golden age of liquidity. There is a lot of money around now.
yeah, a lot of money around, a lot of liquidity. That's not to say some people aren't doing it tough. They are, because cost of living's rising. And for some people, none of that matters because they're on welfare or they're on a relatively low or fixed income. So we need to always, of course, bear that in mind.
Consider it as well, yeah.
Yeah,
But obviously, I said many years ago, that we're going to see, and I think I've proven to be right, the biggest disparity in wealth, which we're seeing basically the removal of the middle class, poorer getting poorer, the rich are getting a lot richer.
Yeah.
Because they're using all these opportunities.
Yeah.
Now, Adrian, as you know, I can probably speak for hours with you on this. But
Yes, Chris.
first of all, thanks for being on the podcast. I've got some quick fire questions that I can
Yes.
shoot at you. You ready?
Okay. Yes.
Because
I think so.
I'm cautious of
As
your
ready
time.
as I'll ever be.
Now, have a little bit of fun.
Yep.
What's the first thing you think of when you wake up?
It's time to go for a run.
I know you're a big runner for all of our listeners. He takes me around the town and he's walking, running, and it's hard for me to keep up with him. He's a very fit individual. Probably same question. How do you start your day?
Go for a run.
Go for a run. What is your favorite thing to cook?
I'm not a cook. Sorry.
Okay.
Maybe if I do, I'm on the barbecue.
What's the worst job you've ever had?
I don't think I've ever had a bad job, because I believe if you've got a bad job, move on. I think maybe the one that was probably the hardest one to do was when I was 14 or 15 and I set up my own pool cleaning round. And I was very proud of what I was doing. I was cleaning these pools regularly. But for whatever reasons, people never had the chemicals I needed. They always had their pets out. I had to control their pets. Like, it was a difficult job, but I was proud of it.
Love what you do, so important. If you were stuck on an island for a year and you could only listen to 3 albums, what would you listen to? What music?
ABBA,
Yep.
Frank Sinatra.
Yep.
The third. I'm not sure about the third. Need to think about the third. But ABBA and Frank Sinatra are spontaneous responses.
What's one item you can't leave the house without?
Well, now my laptop.
Your laptop, which you just purchased with the consulting firm, we know.
Yeah, I'm sure my wife and kids are thinking my phone.
What is your biggest pet peeve, to be honest?
Yeah. People not being on time.
I put that "to be honest" in there for you as well.
Thank you for that.
What is the best gift you've ever received? Besides the Reventon lapel pin?
Yes, which I wear proudly. Best gift, I think, the love and support of my family.
Beautiful answer. What is something no one knows about you? I'm keen to hear about this one.
I don't think there's anything that no one knows about me. I don't think it's all that well known that I'm a West Coast Eagles supporter. I think people assume I'm not, but I am.
If you weren't in this industry, what would you be doing?
If I wasn't doing my consulting thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if I wasn't doing the consulting thing, I think I probably would have gone back into banking and finance. Yeah.
Name a book that you've read. I know you've read many that's positively shaped you.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Love that book, Robbie Kiyosaki.
Yeah. Read it in my late 20s.
Do you know that's written in 17 languages?
Is it really?
Yeah. I read that somewhere and I was astonished.
Yeah.
I don't know this one either. Do you have any tattoos?
No.
That would have been my answer.
No.
What's your favorite movie?
War of the Worlds, the original one.
Never heard of that.
Mm.
Now, if someone was filming a movie about you, who would be playing the actor?
Well, who do you think?
I don't
it's actually
know.
more interesting.
Great
it's a more
question, but I wouldn't know. I can't answer that one. Who would you say would play the actor?
Well, I've had everything from Mr. Bean through to George Clooney, so take your pick.
Well, there's no way I'd say Mr. It would be someone not wise and knowledgeable, but I wouldn't know. I'd come back. What's the one piece of advice for our listeners you want them to take away from our discussion? Actually, I'm going to say 2 because we've had so many.
Yeah.
2 key actionable items, whether it be on leadership, crisis, or being resilient, whatever it is, key action points that you think are very important in your 35-year career plus. What would they be?
So I think first and foremost, if you're the leader of a business, the leader of a team, the business owner, the people that people look to, I think just be authentic, be yourself, and realize it's not about you, it's about them. So I think that's really important. I think secondly, have purpose. So have purpose to what you're doing and don't just drift along, but have actual purpose. And if you're not happy with how things are panning out, do something about it.
Which you've done all throughout your career.
Yeah.
Who is your hero and why?
I'm not great on sort of having a hero. I've never really
someone
been.
you look up to, a mentor?
Yeah, so there's lots of people that have influenced me. One of them's a gentleman called Dick Morath. who was my chairman when I was at National Australia Bank and MLC. He taught me a great deal about how to act at a board table, how to chair a board meeting, how to get the balance right between governance, risk, and how to engage with people who are coming into the board meeting. So I got a lot from Dick Morath, and he's highly regarded in financial services. And in more recent times, someone you've had some connection with, Janae Jean of Boston Global.
She's fantastic.
She's fantastic. So Janae's been a safe harbour for me. She's been someone I've been able to share things with. She's supported me throughout my Porter Davis journey, and now is directly supporting me in my Hondros Consulting journey.
Yeah,
So,
and she does things on leadership and the Berkman method and all these things, which is a very good thing to learn about. So if you do connect with Adrian, I'm sure he can help you put that in place. I've found it very beneficial.
Yeah.
When you're not working, how do you spend your free time? I think I know this one.
There's a bit of running and walking, but also I just love time with family and friends, of which I'm blessed with a large group of people in that category, but also love travel. Yeah.
I know you're a very fit man, which I think contributes to your calmness and overall. Last question, and I want to know this as well. What is your go-to stress management technique? When you're extremely stressed, you told me a couple of these things, and I drew a lot from it.
Mm-hmm.
You're about to explode. Something serious has happened at work or at home for that matter. How do you deal with that?
Well, if you can, it's best to create a circuit breaker, and that would be just to walk away. If you're not going to be the best version of yourself, the best thing to do is to remove yourself from the situation and preferably walk outside.
Stay cool, calm, and collected.
And just walk out the door.
Don't act irrational. Just think about it. Come back.
Yep. Go for a walk.
If you're not ready, go for another walk.
If you're not ready, do another lap. Yep.
So I remember I was through a point through walking the botanical and asked you this question.
Yep.
And I had a circumstance like that a few days later.
Yep.
That's exactly what I did. And I came back. Definitely was happy that I waited to respond.
Yeah.
So I think it was a lot more calmer.
Yeah. Yeah. Best way to go if you can.
Well, Adrian, I'd like to thank you very much for being on my podcast on season 4. I look forward to working with you for many years to come. And for all you out there, I hope you enjoyed this first episode with Mr. Adrian Hondros. Thank you.